My name is Mara Walsh, and I am in the United States, specifically between Philadelphia and New York, in the Eastern time zone. So if you're trying to figure out what time these presentations go off in your local region, just use Philadelphia or New York, the time of it, which is normally 5 p.m. or 7 p.m., and then your own region, and you can figure that out. Even if you Google it, you could say, what time is it in London when it's 5 p.m. in Philadelphia, and it'll tell you. When we are not traveling virtually, I host groups on physical tours, as well as help others plan their own family and group vacations. Don't let the name Girl Travel Tours fool you. We welcome everyone on our tours, not just girls. The name came about because I started leading physical tours with EF Tours as a Girl Scout leader, but now I lead tours for ages teens through seniors, with many strictly adult trips as well through many tour operators. But when COVID struck and we were unable to travel physically, I started traveling with my tour guide friends from all over the world virtually. I really wanted to support the tour director community during this time of travel restrictions where they were not able to work. And I really wanted to keep the excitement of travel alive for my travel group and also extend that opportunity to those of you who've learned about us through your friends, your family, and on social media. And thankfully, these tour presentations have served both purposes quite well. We've done about 75 since the start of COVID. And if you would like to access any of the recordings, they are all available on my website, girltraveltours.com. There's a virtual tours menu, which you can click on and then just scroll down, and they're all there. Even you may have to hit the more button at the bottom to see even more of them as they populate on the page. You can also view them on our Facebook page, and you can view them on the YouTube channel, Girl Travel Tours. Pretty much if you Google Girl Travel Tours and my name, Mara Walsh, you will come up with a solution for you to view them. Especially, I want to alert people because next week we will not be having a live virtual tour. This is a great time and opportunity for you to go back and check out one of the virtual tour presentations that you may have missed. We have several more tours planned for the coming year, and we do have several that we have up on my website now that are ready for registration. I'm going to go through them here, but I just shared a list of them so that you can see. Again, we have a skipped week next week, but then the week after, we're doing Piedmont, which is in Italy. Then we're going to go over to the canyons, like the Grand Canyon, Bryce, Zion's, the national parks in the USA. We're going to Marche, Italy. We're going to do Madrid, Slovenia, and the Cayman Islands. And I am adding more and more after that, so we will have more virtual tours coming. As long as you're interested in viewing these virtual tour presentations, we will continue to produce them for you. I want to review a few ways you can interact with us during the event. As I said, there is a Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar. That's a great place for you to put in questions that would go towards the guide about the program that you want to be answered after the presentation. Or if you have questions about my travel program, you could put them in there as well, and we will answer those live. If you have a comment or something that you want to share with me during the presentation, by all means, put it in the chat. And I always like to start off with a poll to kind of get a sense what your connection to the location is. So I'm going to launch that poll now. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your connection to Bucharest, Romania? I have been and love it. I have a trip booked. I plan to go in the future. I have no set plan, but I'm interested in the location, or I am solely interested in experiencing it virtually. If I were answering the poll, I would have to say, I plan to go in the future. We are going to do a Halloween tour in a couple of years, I believe 2024, tied to a river cruise. So we're going to do the Lower Danube, end in Romania, and then meet up with Vlad and Georgiana for a Transylvania tour, which sounds just so amazing, and I can't wait. So it looks like, I'm going to end this poll and share the results with everybody. It looks like about 50% of us have no set plans to go, but they're interested in the location. And I would imagine that after this virtual tour, those answers may change a little bit. It is pretty impressive that about 11% of the audience has been to Bucharest, so I think that's pretty impressive. And then we have about 3% or 4% that have a trip booked. So I hope that you've booked with Romanian Thrills. I'm going to stop sharing. If you have not gotten that little poll off your screen, you could just click on the button on the top left and that will take it right off for you so that you could see the presentation again. Today's tour, like all of our tours, are scheduled for 90 minutes plus a Q&A. So I hope you are ready for the presentation with maybe a warm toddy if you are in Romania, because I think it's like below 0 at this point and they're freezing their little tails off, or a water like I always have. A tour wouldn't be complete without a fantastic tour director. And today we are lucky to have back Vlad from Romania, who will take us on a tour through his nation's capital, Bucharest. I will share with you via chat and during the Q&A how you can tip the tour guide. If you appreciate this presentation and our guide's knowledge, all of the tips do go directly to the guide once collected, minus the Zoom operating expenses. So today I want to welcome back Vlad and say hello and welcome, and I hope you're keeping warm. And I am ready to hand this presentation over to you if you're ready, Vlad.
Hi, Mara. Nice to see you again. Hello, folks. Nice to see everyone and such a diverse group of people tonight in Romania, because it's quite late in here and freezing cold, as Mara suggested. It's around -12 Fahrenheit or -24 Celsius. So it would be close to impossible to do a live tour through Bucharest as we speak. However, we did that in summer and we're happy to share any video footage of that. But we will actually go on a walking tour of Bucharest today, and to tell you a little bit about more, because some of you know me from previous tours with Mara, but I actually started as a Bucharest tour guide many, many years ago. So I will share my screen over here, and Mara, please do let me know if everything goes well and you can see it properly.
You're great to go, Vlad.
There we go. And there we have it. So we will actually go through the hidden gems, the stories, and all the other attractions that Bucharest has to offer. Lots of them you will not find in any guidebooks or touristic maps. So I think it's going to be an interesting journey. I named it The Story of Bucharest, from Medieval Rulers to Communist Dictators. So without further ado, I will actually show you what we have been doing before the pandemic. I started as a tour guide around almost 10 years ago, and I can't believe it, in Bucharest. We used to have lots of people, and nowadays you can imagine with COVID, it's not as many. But with time, we realized, and I realized, I want to do things a little bit differently, because it was really hard to talk and gather such a vast number of people as you see in this picture, and we moved to private country tours. So from Bucharest, I started exploring the country better and see more traditions and cultural things we have in Romania, in order to better showcase Romania together with its capital, Bucharest, to our guests. And together with Georgiana in the picture, we started Romanian Thrills, which is a boutique company that does tours all around the country. But again, Bucharest is the city that adopted me, and I adopted it, if it makes sense. So we kind of grew fond of each other, even though a lot of people have mixed feelings about Bucharest. And in order to kind of pinpoint Bucharest on the map, we first need to see Romania on the map. And that would be over here in Eastern or Southeastern Europe, geographically in Central Europe, part of the European Union since 2007, around 15 years by now. And Bucharest, its capital, not in the very center of the country, but in the southeast part of the country, where there's not a lot of mountains, but a lot of traffic. And with this, I would actually like to ask the audience for a poll. And I can actually launch the poll about and see where do you guys think that Bucharest was part of. So there were 3 historical provinces in Romania back in the days. You have the map now of Romania nowadays. And I was curious to see if anyone knows where Bucharest is located compared to the historical provinces of Romania, which we will go through in a few seconds. It's a very, very close competition. So we have Moldova, we have Transylvania, that I'm sure everyone heard of, and Wallachia. And let's see, we have 50% participants. It's really, really close. I don't want to end the poll right now. But there were 3 different provinces. Moldova was actually to the northeast, Transylvania somehow in the center, northwest of the country, and Wallachia in the southeast. So actually, there's a lot of misconceptions of Bucharest. Bucharest, in my opinion, is called the city of contrasts. And you see in the poll, Wallachia, the region that Bucharest is actually part of, got the least amount of votes. So this is why we are doing this tour, to bust any myths and any legends, and to see what is the real deal with Bucharest. So in order to show you on the map how Romania looked like medieval times, when you take a look at these provinces in here, you have Transylvania, you have Wallachia and Moldavia, you will see Bucharest is southeast. And of course, Romania looked a little bit different. And I show you this context because it helps us understand what shaped Bucharest throughout the centuries and why it got to the point where it has such a mixture of architecture and cultural influences and food and so on. So Bucharest right here in Wallachia on the south, it was actually not the capital of this region. It only became the capital of Romania around 200 years ago. And these regions are important because Moldova, for example, in northeast was influenced by Poland and later the Russian Empire. Transylvania in northwest was influenced by Hungary and later the Austrian Empire. And Wallachia to the south, including Bucharest, was influenced for many, many centuries by the Ottoman Empire, which is nowadays, let's say, Turkey. So we got a lot of Oriental influences because of that. This is an actual representation of the provinces of Romania nowadays, and we still see Bucharest here on the south. And this is a map of the city of Bucharest. You see it's concentric, it's in a circle, it's round. It's not a grid-like city. This circle characteristic is characteristic for most of medieval towns that were started because they had different layers of walls, starting from the interior until the outer walls in order to defend against attackers. And I want to take you on a journey through the old town of Bucharest, or better said, what is left of the old town of Bucharest. We would start in kilometer 0, what is of Bucharest, and the fountain area. We will see who built these fountains that we will start with. This area is called Union Square because all these 3 provinces that we discussed about, Wallachia, Moldova, and Transylvania, were united around 100 years ago in 1918. And this is celebrated even today as Romania's national holiday, national day. We will walk from this area until the old town, and we will see a lot of interesting buildings, and we will see how with the passing of time, the architecture changed a lot. And in order to understand where the name Bucharest comes from, I want to tell you the legend of Bucur. Bucur was a shepherd that came in, we don't know exactly when, around 1,000 years ago or so, in this area from the mountain, descended and found this plain forested area with a river flowing by, and he decided to build a settlement here. Now, the legend of Bucur, the shepherd, is the one that gives us the name of Bucharest. Bucharest nowadays in Romanian is spelled București, which comes from this shepherd, Bucur, nowadays meaning joy in Romanian, and Ești, which means you are. So a lot of people now associate Bucharest with you are joy, the translation of the word, the etymology. Other people just take it to the legend of this shepherd that once installed himself here and started this settlement many, many centuries ago. I think it's mixed, and we will find out actually very soon who the official founding father of Bucharest was. But when you start a settlement, you always start with a church during those times, because again, we are in medieval times. And this is the oldest church in Bucharest. It starts right after we enter the old town. We can see it. Of course, it doesn't really look that old. This was actually started in 1300s. It was the royal church. The rulers of Wallachia, of this region, were crowned in here. But with time, it became known as Saint Anthony Church. And Saint Anthony is not really a very Romanian saint, let's say. We are Orthodox in Romania. So this guy is from Padua, from Italy. He's very celebrated in Portugal. In Romania, very few churches are dedicated to him. But there's a reason why he is here, because his icon actually survived the Great Fire in Bucharest in around 1800s. And he's also known as the saint that will help you find lost things. So because this is considered a miracle icon that will, perform miracles and help you out during troubled times, he's also a little bit different than our saints. Usually Sundays are the holidays in a religion holiday during the week in Romania. But this guy is celebrated on Tuesday. So every Tuesday in this church, in the old town, the oldest church that has been renovated recently in Bucharest, there's a long queue of people in front of the church, like this, looking for lost items, objects, you name it, praying to Saint Anthony. In all honesty, statistically, there's so many women in this queue, and a lot of locals joke around saying that they're actually looking for their lost love. So many people, even if they're tourists, they will come over here, they will pray, and maybe Saint Anthony will help them out. Moving forward from this church, as we go into the old town, we will see Manuc's Inn. This is the oldest surviving hotel in Bucharest. Nowadays is actually not used as a hotel, but it's very important for the culture of Bucharest, because you've seen the church before. It was built in a more Byzantine style, whereas this one, you can already see the Oriental influence. It was built in a caravanserai style. This is an Oriental style brought by the Ottomans, because Bucharest, if you've seen on the map, it was halfway from Istanbul, or Constantinople, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, to Vienna. So people, merchants going on the Silk Road, transporting and carrying goods, they needed a place to rest. They needed a place where they would protect their goods, and they would bring their caravans, their horse carriages. They would park them inside, basically. The only gate available, the one that you see in this picture, would shut off, and on the walls, you would have archers and people who would protect you. Of course, you would come in, you would have an accommodation, you would enjoy a meal, some company, and the next day you would be on the way to your next destination, which happens nowadays too. So now they opened as a restaurant, a really nice restaurant, and they plan to open the second floor with accommodation soon. It was a very long process for the descendants of the original owners, because this was built in 1800, to recover it after the long period of communism in Romania, and to turn it to turn it back to its former glory. And because it's such a reputable restaurant, and it's influenced by the cuisine that the Ottomans and the Turks brought to us, actually want to show you a few of the things that we do when we go to a restaurant. When we start a meal, we always start with a liquid appetizer, we call it. And this would be called tsuika. It's a plum spirit. And yes, I actually managed to start my own distillery here in Bucharest. You see my name on it. It's actually one of my cousins, and we will talk about him very soon. But the next one that I want to suggest, if this plum spirit is too strong, because it can go up to 40% alcohol. So that's around 80 proof. It's a little bit too strong. The other version that I highly recommend to the ladies is Vișinată, which is sour cherry liquor. It's more mellow, it's sweet, it's sour, it's around 18, I would say, percent alcohol. So, 35 proof, not too bad. It boosts the appetite. It will make you, really want to enjoy your food. And even if it's considered a ladies' drink in Romania, I really like it. I'm in love with it. So don't tell anyone else that I'm sharing this with you. And after we have, stimulated our appetite, we would start with a dish that was influenced by the Ottoman Empire. It's called ciorba in Romanian, and you can find it in different areas nowadays. But the way you find it in Romania is very specific. So it's like a sour soup. It can be vegetables, meat, all kinds of meat. We even have a special one with tripe, which I personally don't like, but there's a lot of people who love it. And it's quite of a hearty soup, soured with fermented wheat or anything. Sometimes you can even add vinegar to sour it. And it's served sometimes with sour cream and hot pepper and a little bit of bread on the side. It's really delicious. And this is only the first course of a lunch, for example. For the second course, something that was also inspired by the Ottomans, and you can find in these restaurants in the old town of Bucharest, is sarmale, which is rolled cabbage leaves with minced meat inside, with a little bit of rice, some spices, and then you eat them with polenta and sour cream next to them. Of course, a little bit of hot pepper if you wish. And that's really a proper way to have what we call Romanian dish or Romanian menu. But again, Bucharest is so important, and we can talk about it because it was influenced by these great empires around it, because it was at the crossroads of big empires throughout the centuries. And we kind of got a little bit of everything and tried to make it our own. So we talked about Bucharest, Romania during medieval times, but we don't really know, after Bucur the shepherd, who we know came and founded a settlement here, who was actually ruling from Bucharest, because there is a princely court dating from as far as 14th century, 1300s. That's where the church that we've seen was over here. But there was a royal court that a ruler used from here, even though it was not the capital. It was not the capital because Bucharest is a flat city and it was very difficult to defend. So people would retreat towards Transylvania in the mountains to have a better advantage defending themselves in front of the Ottomans or whoever would attack them. This princely court, though, once we pass by it, we would see a statue that is very intriguing. It's a very controversial person that we can see in here. And he's considered actually the founding father of Bucharest. And I would actually launch a second poll to you guys to see who is the official founding father of Bucharest, in your opinion, before we would go further. Let's see if we can get this one right. It's, again, very, very, very tight competition. Now we're getting more votes for someone that I was talking about. So we might get, all right. We got more than 50% people joining us for the poll. I will end the poll and share the results with you. So we have Bucur, Dracula, or Ceausescu. And Bucur emerged winner because, yes, as I told you, there is a legend according to which a shepherd came down and settled in this area. However, the first ever written document, the official document that was written about Bucharest, was not Bucur, was not Ceausescu, who lived in the 20th century. He was more of a spiritual father for some of the Romanians, but Dracula. And Dracula was a real guy. Dracula existed. Dracula was a ruler in the 15th century, not ruling from Bucharest, but also having a royal court over here. So speaking of him, we see the statue closer. We'll see the name, the name of Dracula, Vlad Țepeș in Romanian, from 1456, 1462. Vlad the Impaler in English, Vlad Țepeș or Vlad the Impaler. His real name was actually Vlad Dracula. In 1459, if you look at this clock, this was the first official document that the historians have found of Bucharest to be mentioned. Even though it did exist as a settlement long time before that, this was the first time it was written in a request from Vlad the Impaler to get soldiers to defend the city against the incoming attacks. So you will go around the town, you will see this number 1459 all over the place. We would explain people that Bucharest is at least 600 years old officially. Now, Vlad the Impaler is known to a lot of people for his infamous reign. He was very cruel. Again, he lived in medieval times, but he got the Dracula name. It wasn't a nickname, but it was his actual last name because his father was awarded the Order of the Dragon in his fight against the Ottomans. It was a Christian order. You can see the cross on the back of this dragon. And because during those times, people didn't really have Netflix or Amazon Prime or HBO, they haven't watched Game of Thrones. They haven't seen a dragon before. They associated the dragon with the devil. So in Romanian, devil means Dracul, same as here. They call him Vlad the Devil, Vlad Dracul. This is the house of him in Sighișoara, and Vlad Dracul was the father of Vlad the Impaler. During those times, if you had a son, you would add an 8, the last name. Hence, from Vlad Dracul, you would have Vlad Dracula or Vlad Jr. if you want. So imagine during those times, he was just a baby. He was just born, and his name was Vlad Dracula, Vlad, the son of the devil. Pretty scary. He managed to hold on against incoming attacks, but not for long because in the upcoming few centuries, Bucharest lost its autonomy more and more and became more and more influenced by the Ottomans. So in a plot twist, if you want, the father of Bucharest, Dracula. It can be even like a new Hollywood movie, if you wish. I was telling you that Vlad the Impaler didn't really rule or defend from this princely court that we can see nowadays in the old town of Bucharest, but from Poinar Fortress. This is on a peak of a mountain in between Wallachia and Transylvania, easily defendable. And these are the ruins that you can visit nowadays. So forget about Bran Castle and all the marketing around it, but this is his real lair. And in order to get there, you need to climb the same number of steps that is equal to the year that he ruled, actually, from 1456. And this is how it looks with a little bit of mist. And this is where he got actually the nickname later, Vlad the Impaler, because of his favorite torture method to scare off enemies and even his own subjects. And moving to something more pleasant, actually, to the eye, is Stavropoleos Church. As we walk to the old town, all these places are around like 50 meters around because we don't have much of an old town left because of fires, earthquakes, wars, and so on. But this church actually managed to stay almost intact. Even though it's not the oldest one in the old town, it is the one that is best preserved. It's called Stavropoleos Church, from Stavros, which means cross, and polis, which means city. These are not Romanian words, these are Greek words because it was started by a Greek priest in 1724. And if you look at the image to the right, it actually looks very similar to the image that you can see nowadays. This style is actually a style that is pretty famous around Romania, but it's called a Neo-Romanian style, an architectural style that you will find all over Bucharest, noble in neighborhoods that were used by the nobility back in the days, and also in the rest of the country in palaces and castles and so on. So this church is really, really beautiful, small, tiny, very well preserved. Inside, it's decorated, depicted with pictures of scenes from the Bible, saints, and so on. It has a lot of Byzantine influence, of course, but as I told you, round arches, columns, decorated columns, these are signs of Romanian Renaissance, if you wish. And the reason why people painted the walls and the interior of the church was because during those times, not a lot of people knew how to read and write, and they needed to, it was easier for them to see visual clues about what happened in the Bible and so on. So this was a very powerful method to spread the word of God during those times. A royal visit also happened in this church not very long ago. Let's see if, yes, we can get it in here. Let's see if we can get this to play. Yeah. So we have some special guests in this church. It's one of the hidden gems in the old town. But nowadays, because of Instagram and so on, more and more people come visit it. Back in the days, it was a true event to have someone like Prince Charles in the image to visit the church. And you can see in this video footage that inside, the doors are the original one. They are refurbished. The steps made in stone. It's a very, very tiny one. We can see it in this video. But it's something that managed to stay preserved for so many centuries, even under some Turkish occupation. So it's really something that is worth admiring. This would be the altar. So it's very, very tiny. You can fit probably 50 people maximum in it. And they also still have nowadays one of the nicest Byzantine choirs in the country. The one that you saw over here. Now, if you want to visit, to explore this church online, you can do it. You can just go on stavropoleos.ro, and that would be the name of the church over here, .ro, and you can do a virtual tour inside. During those times, I think it's really handy. This would be the nuns' courtyard of the church. It's one of my favorite places when we go and have a tour in Bucharest, because even though you are surrounded by restaurants, bars, and nightclubs sometimes in here, somehow they build the acoustics in such a way that there's absolute quiet, only birds chirping, maybe a few cats. And it's just a very nice place to kind of have a moment with yourself and to, be mindful of where you are and to enjoy where you are. It's also a place where they actually have some artifacts, artifacts that they saved. In the background, you see some tombstones and some religious artifacts from many centuries ago, because in the communist regime in Romania in the 20th century, there was a debate with our beloved dictator Nicolae Ceausescu in the right side of this picture, to demolish the churches because he wanted to build big boulevards, to build a new headquarters for the communist regime, and religion wasn't really tolerated. It was kind of tolerated, wasn't encouraged for sure during those times. So he didn't care if they would get destroyed. But one guy called Eugen Iordachescu on the left side of this image actually convinced Ceausescu to give him a chance to save some of these churches. And in order to save some of these churches, the only request of Ceausescu was to move them out of the way of these boulevards and to hide them between the new blocks of flats that he will build. But this is an example of a mobile church, or a church that is being moved by this engineer who managed to do it. He is actually called Heaven's Engineer, the engineer sent from heaven by the priests. The way he would do it, as you can see in here, he would dig a ditch around the church. He would lift it using hydraulic pumps, lift it up, pour a concrete base under the church, and then put it on train tracks and move it a little bit in order to to achieve the desired location so that Ceausescu will still build his boulevards, but the churches would survive. Because these are part of the heritage of Romanian people. There were so many churches in Bucharest, it's true, but they were all old from 1300s, 1400s, 1500s, and so on and so forth. Different languages, different alphabets that they used throughout these times. So it was quite impressive because nobody else did this method of moving buildings. It was so successful. And actually the reason why Ceausescu decided to apply this method instead of just destroying them, because he realized there's potential to this. If it succeeds, he can even move entire buildings and blocks of flats. It's a technique that is used nowadays all over the world to move buildings in case they are needed, and especially protected buildings and old buildings like these ones that are subject to crumbling and deterioration. This is actually a picture, a very interesting picture from 1980s with a block of flats that Ceausescu put on rail tracks in Bucharest. The funny thing is that people, if you notice the cables next to the block, people inside still had running water, electricity, and everything else while they were being moved by Ceausescu. Some of them even woke up and they didn't know what's happening because they just informed people a few days before if they didn't leave the house. They would wake up to a moving building, and it was not an earthquake. While we move from this church, Stavropola's church, we end up in Carucubere, which is another restaurant that I personally really like and is very popular. It's an iconic building in the old town of Bucharest. And I like it a lot because it actually tells the story of the Renaissance of Bucharest, how Romanian people continued to look towards the West instead of towards the East during those times, 1700s, 1800s, as you have seen from Manuks in from the Oriental arches. Now we move to a more different architecture from Baroque and Art Nouveau and highly decorated facades. This was the first brewery of Bucharest, and it was opened in late 1800s by a guy who actually imported beer from Germany initially, from Transylvania, and he would sell it by the barrel. You couldn't have just a pint or a bottle, you would have to buy a whole barrel. So the translation of Carucubere, of the name of this restaurant, means just the beer wagon. He would transport these barrels with a horse carriage with the wagon. And he made a fortune. He built this beautiful, iconic building. And as we move through the old town, all the architecture changes towards more modern, more Western approach to it. If you look to the facade, to the image to the right, let's see. I will circle it. There we go. There's a statue over there on the top. There's actually a statue. You can see it in here too on the left that holds a pint in front of you, and it tells you the Romanian word for cheers. And the Romanian word for cheers is this one on the bottle of beer, is noroc. Noroc means cheers. So if you ever want to do it in Romanian. They also started a brand of beer, obviously. It's not the best one, I have to admit, but it's easy so you understand the spelling. If you are, coming from Germany or just been to Oktoberfest and you are coming to Romania and you want to cheer in German, don't do it. You might say prost. In Romanian, prost means stupid. So just stick with noroc or even cheers and you'll be fine. This is the interior of the establishment. It's really, really nice. It's got spiral staircases, painted stained glass, authentic Romanian cuisine, and just a nice atmosphere and vibe all together. And speaking of this restaurant with beer, the best dish that Romanians and especially people of Bucharest like is mici or mititei, in literal translation meaning little ones, because they're tiny skinless sausages that were invented right in the very heart of the old town, probably very close to this brewery. We don't have exact records, but we do know that at one point, the owner of a pub in around 1800s, he ran out of skin to put the sausages in, to put the meat in, and it was a very popular dish. So people were hungry, they wanted to order fast, and he decided to just put the meat on the grill. People loved it. Since then, it's a tradition in Bucharest to eat them with mustard, with bread or chips or French fries, and definitely wash it down with a cold beer, and you're off for a good treat. And for breakfast, also a 100% Romanian traditional dessert that this restaurant actually does absolutely insanely delicious is papanash, or Romanian donuts. These are big bowls of fried dough that is also mixed with fresh cheese, with sweet cheese, and topped off with sour cream and blueberry or blackcurrant or sour cherry jam, because that's how we like our calories. Deep fried, sour cream, jam. Don't take my word for it. You have to try this. We always tell people who visit at least Bucharest, but if you do come to Romania, try these. You won't find them anywhere else. And this restaurant, for example, in the old town, in the heart of the old town, is a really good choice to try them. They come in pairs of 2. I would suggest 1 per person is more than enough, but in case you ever need help, I'm here. They can be, now we have reinterpreted dishes, so you can find them even turned upside down with ice cream, with chocolate sauce. You have to try them though. And as we move from this restaurant, we go to Czech Palace, which is one of the most iconic buildings, again, from the whole Bucharest, because it's got this very interesting, beautiful facade. It was actually, it recycled the plans of the central station of Bucharest. This is how the central station of Bucharest should have looked like if the First World War wouldn't have come. Instead, they built this at a smaller scale. Initially, it was actually finished before the First World War, because it was a smaller scale. In 1900, it got finished, and it was the first commercial bank of Romania. The commercial bank of the commercial bank of Romania, Czech, this one, was actually started in 1864, but they moved to this iconic building in 1900s. It's definitely one of the most appreciated buildings. However, very hard to get into, because even today it's the headquarters of this bank, which is a commercial bank to this day. And you need a special appointment or connections high up, but we can arrange it in case you need it. We can make it work. It's really beautiful inside too. Let's see if we can get this quick video. It's all marble, and it's built in an eclectic style. It was built by a team of Romanian and French architects, because, as I told you, we were starting to move towards Western influence, and this is a time where Bucharest, especially, and Romania as a country, started to develop really good relations with France. Because of the Ottoman influence, people weren't really, didn't have universities in Romania. We didn't have higher education in here. So the kids or the nobility, the kids of the nobility, or the rich people in these provinces, they would send them to study in Western Europe. So they could send them to Germany, to Austria, to Italy, France, and so on. But French language is Latin, Romanian language is Latin, and it was a lot easier to learn. So a lot of people would go to Paris to study. They developed relationships, diplomatic relationships. They came back, they brought some of this style back. And a lot of these buildings that you see around this area of the old town are in French style, in the eclectic style. And actually, the next building that we will visit, or the next road that we will visit, is full of this architectural style. People wanted to be French. People dressed like French, talked like French, invented words that sounded French. Bucharest was actually called Paris of the East, or Little Paris. So it was a time, this was a time of interwar period between First and Second World War, and even before First World War it happened, because the independence, total independence of the Ottoman Empire, it started in around 1800s, 1864, and then 1877 was finally got when we had the first kings and queens of Romania. This started a huge building program for institutions all over Bucharest, which became the capital just 100 years before. And this is the street where you see, where you can see nowadays Czech Bank. Of course, we changed the cars that we see in this picture. I call this avenue, which is called Victory Avenue, because the victorious Romanian army after the War of Independence came marching on this street. I call it the Facebook of those times, because look at how many people were there, you know, dressed to their Sunday's best. Not so many cars, of course. It was a street for people, and you would just talk about what's going on, what the news are. Not everyone had, there was barely no telephone during those times and so on. It was a very chic area for promenade, for a stroll, let's say, not only on Sundays, but every day. From this Victory Avenue, as we walk down in the old town, we can actually turn right and connect directly, not with a commercial bank, but with the National Bank. The National Bank of Romania, the one you can see here in the picture, was also started after the War of Independence. So it was finished in 1900 again. Many of these buildings were finished in 1900. They're all called palaces. So you've seen Czech Palace, National Bank. It's also called the Palace of the National Bank. We have many palaces, but they called them palaces because in France, every building was a palace. So even that was borrowed. Actually, in this picture, you will see on the left, in the center left area, you will see a building that was the first shopping mall of Bucharest. And we were very original with our naming. We named it Galerie Lafayette, exactly the same name as the ones in Paris. Now it's called Victoria, from victory. So a little bit of a change. National Bank of Romania, the one you see here, got actually the second prize in architecture the year that it was built, and it wasn't even finished. They just wanted to put the project, to submit the project, because the deadline was coming. So a lot of people said, okay, if it would have been completed, it would have won the prize of architecture. I don't think outside is as beautiful as inside. It's really a gorgeous building. I would say that it's similar to, in terms of security, to the Czech Palace, to the first commercial bank of Romania. Even more, I might say, because there's airport tight security in there, and you actually cannot visit it unless you have a scheduled trip over there. You need to plan it way in advance or ask someone local to do it for you. They are only in Romanian, and it's nice to have a guide. If you're interested in architecture, in arts, or even in money, they have a really nice money collection over there. It's a nice place to walk around. This was filmed actually during a day of open doors, when everybody could come in and visit the National Bank of Romania. To this day, it's considered the safest building, not only in Bucharest, but in Romania, because it has never been robbed. Even though in communist times, actually, in the 60s, it wasn't robbed, like people didn't come inside and attacked it, but a car transporting money for the National Bank got hijacked by a group of thieves, and they were trying to get away with the money and gold out of the country to cross the border. Again, we are in communist times, borders are closed, secret police is everywhere. Guess what? They got caught, and the ending wasn't really pleasant for them because they actually, as punishment, not only they were put in prison or awarded the capital punishment, but actually they wanted to film a documentary. The communists, they asked the thieves to star in the movie, in the documentary. They played their own roles in the heist for the documentary, only to be put to death later with the death sentence, to be shot. So definitely I wouldn't recommend hijacking or stealing anything from the National Bank in Romania. Moreover, the gold that you will find here is not as much because the gold reserves are kept in London nowadays. But speaking of money, this is how Romanian money looked like, and they actually made of plastic. We were actually the third country in the world, and definitely the first one in Europe, to adopt plastic notes. And this comes as a very interesting story. You can see them over here. I really like them, but the way they came into circulation is funny because Australia was first, New Zealand, and then Romania. And, we weren't a very developed country. This happened around 15 years ago. But Mexico has them now. I think the UK is introducing them. A lot more countries have them now, but Romania had a lot of other priorities 15 years ago to develop the country after the fall of communism. There was a visit by the chief of the International Monetary Fund to Bucharest, to Romania, and he was assessing the economic situation of our country in order to take some money from the International Monetary Fund in discussions about the European Union. And he tells us, you guys are doing progress, you're doing well, but you really need to use more plastic in your payments. The next day, our governor, the governor of the National Bank, actually comes out on public TV and says, we have consultations, we had discussions with the chief of the IMF, and starting next year, we will switch to plastic money. So a lot of the reporters, linked these two events, and they said, look, this guy is saying you need to pay with plastic, this guy's printing plastic money. But of course, the chief of the International Monetary Fund was referring to cards, credit cards, debit cards. You need to use less cash and more cards because there's a lot of black market ops. There's a lot of transactions, money transactions that are not being recorded in Romania. But we got the plastic money. I love them. You can wash them. You can do even money laundering at home. And it's great. You can go swimming with them, as you can see. Now, if we move forward a little bit from that, from the Victory Avenue, the one that I showed you, we can see the Romanian Athenaeum. This is, again, one of the most famous buildings you can see in Romania, in Bucharest especially, but in Romania too, I would say. And it was actually built again during those times of the kings. It was built in late 1800s. It was built with no funding from the royal family or anyone else, but from public subscription. Probably a very early form of crowdfunding. Like you have Kickstarter nowadays or Indiegogo. This was something very similar. Their slogan was one leu for the Ateneu, which was one Romanian currency for the building of this Athenaeum. Athenaeum coming from Athens in Greece because it was considered a very good ancient school. And it's a building that people actually donated money for many years. It took them 28 years to build this building with donations, exclusively with donations for a palace of arts, a building for arts and sciences. And since then, it actually hosts the opera. It's one of the best places to watch a concert. If you look at these windows, actually, on the round at the top of the round roof, you will see the harp as a symbol for music. And inside, this is how it looks like. It's one of the best acoustics in the world. and you can be in front of it on the stage, and you can whisper. All the seats will hear you perfectly. It's the reason also why the biggest classical music festival in this area is held in Bucharest, in this building, in the Athenaeum. It's called George Festival. It was actually not canceled during COVID, but it was actually live streamed online. So there were performers on the stage, but no participants inside, and it was streamed live, like the Olympics. So if you go on the website festivalnescu.ro, you will be able to see recordings, and every year it happens in September. George Enescu, if you wonder who he was, he is on the 5 lei bill, so 5 Romanian currency, and he is considered the Romanian Mozart. As we walk from the Romanian Athenaeum very, very close, we will see Revolution Square. In Revolution Square, you might not look like anything from this picture, but actually, if I can point it out, over here, on the bottom of the center bottom of the image, there is a small balcony, and this balcony is very, very famous because it was the balcony from which the last communist speech in Romania was held by Nicolae Ceausescu, the dictator. You can see him in here. This was before the revolution, before 1989, when the revolution happened, right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And this is how the balcony looked like. Ceausescu is gone. There's a guy here with the Romanian flag and a hole in the middle. That's the symbol of revolution, because in the middle there was the coat of arms of communism, or the symbol of communism. So they took it out. This is how it looked like in the days of revolution. More than 100,000 people in the street, and these were all gathered up in front of that balcony from which Ceausescu made his last famous speech. He didn't really finish it because he got scared. People started booing, attacking the building, storming the building. So he got a helicopter, and along with his wife in the picture, they left. They left the city. They were caught though. They were actually sentenced to death, put on trial, on a mock trial, and executed on Christmas Day. So there you have it. Merry Christmas, Romania. No more dictator. Welcome to democracy. If it would have been that easy. I'm coming back to the same place, to the Revolution Square. You can see the balcony over here. I'll actually switch to a pen right over here. It's not as big as you would think from the other pictures, right? But what I want to show you is this building, because this one is a building that is a monument, actually, that is dedicated to the victims of communism. And a lot of people didn't really understand it. Even locals, especially people in Bucharest, they're not really keen on it. And they call it the potato on a stick, because you see what you see in the middle. It's supposed to be communism with all its hardships and so on, and through it is the will of the people that pierces through that victorious. If you zoom in, there's a red stain or dot next to the potato, let's say it, because a street artist actually shot a red paintball in there, because they said, look, this was actually a bloody revolution. It was the only bloody revolution in Eastern Europe. And a lot of people died, got injured, and so on, in trying to get rid of the communist regime. So it's worth having this as a symbol. Now it doesn't exist anymore because they renovated it and they took away the red stain. However, people are still mocking it. In all honesty, I don't really like it either, because I don't think it's enough for what happened during those times, and it's just something that they decided to do just to say it was done. And of course, Facebook and the internet started making fun of this. And you can see a guy getting ready to make chips from it, or someone more creative decided to put a Doritos on the stick. Probably next one will be Vlad the Impaler using this stick for his torture methods. So speaking of the revolution and what happened in those times, one of the reasons why people got so fed up with the regime was constructions and buildings like this. Literally, our biggest attraction nowadays in Bucharest is the Palace of Parliament, or the way it was called, House of the People, because it was started by Nicolae Ceausescu in Bucharest. It's a megalomaniac project. It was supposed to be the new headquarters for the communist regime, because guess what? He decided that that balcony he was keeping, he was giving speeches from, was not enough for all the fans that were cheering from him. So in 1977, actually, there was a big earthquake in Bucharest, and this is a front picture that represents it very well. And this is the balcony that he wished for himself, a little bit higher up than the previous one. But in 1977, there was an earthquake that affected many parts, especially in the center of Bucharest. And he was just coming, Nicolae Ceausescu came back from a diplomatic visit in North Korea to his good friend, the other dictator over there, the father of Kim Jong-un, the dictator of nowadays North Korea. And he got some inspiration. He decided to, build in a more communist style, in a more monolithic style in terms of architecture. He wanted big boulevards. He saw the cult of personality that people were doing in China and North Korea. He wanted the same. He wanted huge places so that he would have parades and people would clap for him. So he started in 1980s. He used this earthquake as a pretext to demolish everything in this area and to build his own project. This building was started in 1983, and it was not completed in 1989 when he was overthrown by the people. This is a picture from up high. So it's just a huge building. It still holds the record, Guinness records around the world, because it's the second largest administrative building in the world. It's the heaviest building in the world because it's built entirely out of marble all around. Romanian materials, some people said they almost depleted the marble resources in Romania. Crystal chandeliers, retractable roofs. He made no expense, but people were suffering at his expense. So of course, a lot of people started protesting when they could. This would have been the view from his balcony, where you see the parking nowadays in here. There are concerts and other events. And he was, unfortunately for him, he didn't get a chance to enjoy using this building. Even today, it's 98% of the building is not used. It has so many rooms and such a vast volume that it's just impossible to use for a good purpose, or at least the government that is the owner of this building cannot find a good use to it. And it's like a black hole of for money. It's the most expensive building in the whole world to administer. So obviously, as locals, we don't really have great feelings about it. But Ceausescu didn't get the chance to speak from this balcony. It was a foreigner, actually, that had the chance to do it. And I don't think I have a poll for this one, but if you guys have any idea of who the first person who ever had a speech from the balcony of the Palace of Parliament, this balcony over here, please do let me know in the chat. I'll be happy to hear it out. Because it was not a Romanian. I will tell you in a second who it was, but I just want to show you a picture of how much of Bucharest was destroyed in this project by Ceausescu. This, what you see in red on the left side, is the Palace of Parliament. And just for comparison, where we walked today, Old Town, is this. We're talking about like 1 square kilometer. or half a mile. So everything you see in green got destroyed. Around 20% of the whole surface of Bucharest got destroyed to make room for this huge boulevard, all the way from here, all the way here, bigger, longer, wider than the largest boulevard in Europe at that time, which was Champs-Élysées in France. He actually added extra meters to make sure nobody else will build a one closer to him. And the way the Palace of Parliament actually, the project for the building got won, actually, the project got won because they made a contest for architects to submit projects for this new headquarters of the communist regime. And he didn't choose, the nicest one or the one that he thought was the most impressive. He just chose the biggest one because the chief architect was actually a 26-year lady that just finished architecture university. I actually have, let's see, a little video here to get a better idea of the vastness of the building, I would say. Let's see. It would take you, today you can visit it. It takes you around 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Of course, you will only see a few rooms. Nowadays, it is called the Palace of Parliament because our parliament resides there. So I guess, the headquarters of the ruling party that Ceausescu wanted still acts like one. One nice thing is that you can visit this balcony, the one you see in this video. You can visit it during the tour and you can act like Michael Jackson, because yes, Michael Jackson was on this balcony in 1991. He was here on a tour, on a concert. His Dangerous tour happened. And I was just a kid. I was a baby. But I remember later when the images came out, people imagine revolution happened in late 89 and in summer 91, he comes here, the king of pop music, the biggest celebrity in the world, comes in an ex-communist country, just got rid of communism, with music that was really not encouraged. It was Western music, nothing that you could really hear on the radio in the late 80s in Romania. So people couldn't believe Michael was here. They came up and they tried to say hi to him at the balcony. He was doing a tour, and he decided to wave back to them to greet his fans. So he goes on the balcony, is, "Hello, I'm really, really happy to be here in Budapest." So as you know, we are doing a tour of Bucharest, the capital of Romania, not Budapest, the capital of Hungary, our neighbor to the west. So, Michael was Michael. People liked him no matter what. And he ended up having one of the best concerts of his tour. You can actually watch it on YouTube. I highly encourage you, because people say we still hold the record for the largest number of people fainting at a concert. So if you put Michael Jackson Dangerous Tour Bucharest 1991, it's around 2 hours. You don't have to watch the whole thing, even though it's beautiful. But you'll see ambulances going back and forth, taking people from the concert because they couldn't believe Michael was there singing for them. Palace of Parliament has really interesting stories. And another one that happened more recently is regarding Top Gear. If you know Top Gear, they do car shows, and it's related. The theme of the show that they did in Romania when they visited the Palace of Parliament is related to the nickname the locals sometimes have for this building. We call it the iceberg. The iceberg building, because you saw it, is not very tall. It's very wide. It's around 84 meters or around 250 feet tall, but it's around 92 meters deep. So around almost 300 feet deep. So it's deeper than it is taller. because Ceausescu wanted to build it as a protective bunker in case of a nuclear attack during the Cold War. He wanted to have all kinds of protections in place, to have secret tunnels that he can safely exit at the outskirts of the city in case something comes up. Well, it didn't really work for him, but it worked for these guys. These guys came in with Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Maseratis, you name it, some of the most expensive cars in the world. And they decided to do drag races inside these tunnels, underground tunnels of Palace of Parliament. You can also look up these videos. They're quite funny. Unfortunately, you cannot really visit those because it's quite dangerous. They had a whole team and filming crew and so on. But definitely a huge building with a lot of stories that is very difficult to find. And even I'm sure we only scratch the surface in terms of these stories. This is a quick video when Michael Jackson came in. You see this when he checked into the hotel. He's got Michael Teubin, which is Michael, we love you. So I know the quality is really bad, but again, it's 1991. We didn't really have a lot of great cameras on our iPhones during those times. But speaking of Michael and his confusion between Bucharest and Budapest, he didn't really, he wasn't the first and he won't be the last to confuse Bucharest and Budapest. A lot of other artists followed. Let's see. I'll have a video, and I will actually try to share sound with you guys because let's see if I can get this. It's quite a cool video about these name confusions. All right. Let me know if you can hear it and if it's streaming properly.
Hello world, this is Bucharest speaking. Yes, Bucharest, not Budapest. Bucharest is the capital city of Romania. If you think Budapest is, then, my friend, you are a citizen of Wrongaria. Ironically though, the mistake will put you in a pretty good company. Because you see, there were some famous geographically impaired people before you. The King of Pop started the trend in 1990. Hello Budapest, he said. But we didn't get black or white with fury. Then in 1995, it was heavy metal's turn to make the same mistake. There were about 666 boos, but nothing more. An otherwise okay band followed, then again heavy metal, then a guy from New York. None of them bothered to consult Wikipedia before coming here. The show must go on, we said, and it did. But then the confusions made collateral victims. Last year, 400 Athletic Bilbao fans missed the European League final after mistakenly flying to Budapest instead of Bucharest. And that's when we thought it's time to stand up. Rom presents Bucharest, not Budapest.
So that was a campaign actually that one of our authentic chocolate bar makers from Bucharest made to end these confusions. Honestly, I remember they said last year, but of course the campaign is much older. I remember I was a guide in Bucharest, and these guys, around 300 football fans from Athletic Bilbao, city in Spain. There were two Spanish teams, Atletico Madrid, the capital city in Spain, and Athletic Bilbao. They were both competing against each other in Bucharest in the final round. And they took the tickets to Bucharest, of course, but they chartered a plane just for the supporters to Budapest. And they started asking, it was all over the news. They started asking people questions in Budapest, the Hungarians, how can they get to the stadium? And the stadium was like 3,000 miles away. So obviously they ended up watching the game in a bar. What I'm trying to say is don't do the same mistake. I'm here to, help you out in this. and to share some of the few to share few stories that Bucharest has, because it's got many other stories to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions about them. One last thing that I wanted to share with you regarding Bucharest is the new logo. This actually was adopted just a few years ago, before the pandemic, and we actually saw most of the buildings in our tour presentation that we can find in this logo. We can see the Czech building. Let's see if I can, there we go, get the laser. The Czech building, the Czech Palace, the first commercial bank in the lower left. We've seen the Athenaeum on the upper left of the building over here. We've seen the Arc of Triumph. I don't know if I mentioned it in the tour, but the Arc of Triumph the Arch of Triumph in the lower right part of the picture was built again. Guess when? After First World War. When I told you there was a lot of French influence, and not only we copied their shopping malls, we also copied their Arc de Triomphe. So the people were the soldiers were marching through it on the way back, and is on the same Victory Road, Victory Avenue that you have seen before. One outlier of this logo is this building on the upper right. This is the National Arena, usually for football matches or soccer games, because a lot of people asked, why isn't it the Palace of Parliament? It's literally our biggest attraction, the most known. But for us, as I told you, it does provoke some mixed feelings. Hence, nobody really wanted or voted for this to appear. This was actually an online project. So the city council, they did an online voting session, and people could choose the logo of Bucharest, which I thought was very cool, and they could choose what would represent on it. Just a few things about Bucharest. I know there's many more things to talk, and many more videos. You know, we can actually do like a live virtual walking tour, live streams sometimes, or like a recording that we go through every single place in a sunny day. But until then, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. So thank you so much for your time. We actually have a quiz for you too that you can answer to, and the winner will get a special prize, as you have probably gotten used to. So let me know what you think, and what the questions you might have. I'm sure there's many, because we covered quite a lot of history, culture, food, buildings, architecture, stories, legends, I don't know. Everything from medieval rulers to communist dictators.
All right. Thank you, Vlad. Thank you very much. I think that if you can get it through my head so that I say Bucharest instead of Budapest, sometimes that's even good for me too, because I make the same mistake, not because I don't know the difference in the countries, just because I don't know, I might get tongue-tied. I'm not exactly sure why I make that mistake, but I've done it before on a virtual tour even. So thank you from Bucharest. And
My pleasure.
I want to, we will share the quiz. Georgiana may have already shared it, I don't know, but I'll share it again if the link is here, so that everybody sees it in both the Facebook feed and the Zoom feed. And then we have a bunch of questions. You could start to look those over. While you're starting to look those over, I just put up a slide for people to see where you can tip Vlad. You could do it via Venmo or PayPal. You can also use our secure credit card link on the website. If you are going to use the credit card on the website, just be mindful to check the button next to the credit card pictures so that it doesn't mess you up and go through PayPal. It's okay for the US people, but the non-US people, it will kick you out of there. So just be mindful of where you're checking if you're going to use that credit card fee or the credit card option. And also just if you'd like to have a look at our physical tours that are coming up, they're on the right-hand side of the slide, so you can check them out as well. And Vlad, if you are ready, we can go back to the questions and you can work from the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, regarding Bucharest versus Budapest, I just found it funny. So don't think it's nothing. A lot of people ask us, oh, please don't get offended or something. It's totally natural because we have, similar, we're neighboring countries. We're somewhere in Eastern Europe and they rhyme more than anything, right? Budapest, Bucharest. What I tell people as a clue is Bucharest has an R from Romania, whereas Budapest doesn't. So that's really easy to remember and you will always keep it in your mind. Now, let's take some questions. Are they on lockdown? Masks, COVID hotels, put tourists with COVID. So we're not on lockdown. Masks are required in all crowded places and in all indoor restaurants. So that's done. Where did Romania adopt you from? Romania adopted me from Romania, but I said Bucharest adopted me because I actually came to Bucharest for university to study tourism. I was born by the Black Sea in the southeast part of the country. So I didn't really like it at first, but it kind of grew on me and the other way around. Ethnicity of Romania, particularly Bucharest. I'm not sure I understand this, but if you mean like how many Romanians are in Romania, I would say 98%. It's actually I'm sorry, I'm a little bit tired. I understand the question. There's less than 98% of Romanians. We actually have the largest minority in Romania is Hungarians. So we have in Transylvania, in between Transylvania, Moldova, and Wallachia, right in the middle of these three provinces, there is a place called Seklerland or Székely land. And these are in the Middle Ages were Hungarian ethnics sent to defend the borders of the Carpathians against Eastern incursions. So around 10% Hungarians, a couple percent Roma people, Romani people, and the vast majority of Romanians, maybe less than 1% German ethnics. In Transylvania, we had a lot of German Saxons because Transylvania used to be founded by German Saxons. So quite mixed in some areas. What is the name of this soup? The soup would be, let's see, ciorba. I will type it in Romanian. Ciorba. There we go. The cuisine looks fabulous. I do not eat meat or poultry. Will I still be able to enjoy a lot of vegetarian modified traditional dishes? Luckily, yes, because as we've seen throughout the tour, we have quite a religious population. And for the Lent, for example, you are not supposed to eat any meat. And there's a lot of variations to the traditional cuisine. So you can find the sarmale, the dish that I showed you with rolled cabbage leaves with meat. You can only have them with rice and mushrooms instead of meat. They're really delicious. And you can find all sorts of great, delicious spreads like zakuska or bean spread, our version of a hummus, or eggplant spread, many options. You will definitely not starve. Is there a Jewish community? Actually, in the old town of Bucharest, before communism, was one of the most active Jewish communities in Europe. Romania had a huge Jewish community, more than 10, up to 15% Jewish ethnics before Second World War. Of course, the context changed a lot. Especially with Ceausescu destroying so much of the old town and the rest of Bucharest, the Jewish area now is just a small surface of Bucharest, but it's being revitalized. A lot of new projects are happening. A lot of real estate is being developed in there. And there's a really beautiful synagogue that if you do come here, you need to visit. The painted churches of Romania. These are in Bukovina, an area between Moldova and Transylvania in north of Moldova. So not in Bucharest, but these are the ones that we talk about, painted churches, the UNESCO World Heritage ones. There are painted churches in Romania all over the place for the reason that I explained during the tour, because it was a lot easier for people to understand the Bible from these pictures. We were told that was part of the convent monastery of Stavropoleos Church. We were told that was part, the Stavropoleos Church was part, I'm not sure I understand this. So I'll skip this one if you can clarify that for me. Or if Mara, I'm a little bit tired, so please excuse me, but if you get that.
No, actually, I think it's hard sometimes because the question comes up in context, and that was 50 minutes ago. So it's hard to know what exactly.
Thank you. Where would they travel with the church? Again, I'm not sure if it's like church travels, like religious traveling, or because if it's religious traveling, yeah, that can happen. I'm not sure. What year did this happen again? I'm not sure. What are we talking about? Vlad, what is the story of the Gostinari Church just outside Bucharest? That's actually a really good question, which I will save. And I promise you on the next tour, I'll have the answer to, because to be honest with you, I haven't visited this one unless it's one that I know under a different church. If it's in the northeast part next to Snagov, please do let me know in the chat and I might know it so I can detail more. How far did they move the churches? Very good question. Actually, the furthest one was around 100 meters. So not a very long distance, not because they couldn't, but because it wasn't needed. That was, blocks of flats were around 50 meters in difference. And if you do visit Bucharest, I actually have a quick a video. Okay. Mara, can I share very quickly, like 30 seconds of a video?
Just
would that be okay?
Back. Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to show people this is quite important. Important. It's interesting, I would say. And let's see if I can get this in the presentation. Okay, so if you can see it, let me know. I want to show you something about these churches. Okay, 1 second, please, and it will get the way the churches were moved by Ceausescu. It's a drone footage that I really want you guys to see because it's so interesting. In my opinion, it's fascinating. Everybody tells me this. So this is the video. No. Let's see here. You can see, right? Even if it's in my presentation, this is the boulevard, right? That Ceausescu is building towards the Palace of Parliament. See the line of blocks left and right. Between these blocks, you'll see this church hidden, like it's covered. It's totally covered. They built the blocks right at the same. You see the church on the left side. They built the blocks at the same height or a little bit taller than the churches. Let's see. I will let it.
The church was never moved, Vlad?
It was. That's what I'm.
Before they built around it.
No. It was moved and then they built around it.
Right.
Let's do this real quick and take another question. Maybe? No. Okay. I'm trying to see my background image if there's any church. But yeah. So great food and ambience at Carocubere. Thank you. Let's see. Does the church and the Vatican of the Romanian Orthodox faith still exist? I visited it on a tour in 1972. The Vatican of the Romanian church, like you mean the patriarchy, right? Like the head of the church of Romanian. Yes, they still exist. In Romania, they actually have a great influence in here. Vlad, is the food hot, spicy? Actually, the food itself is not in Romania, but we always use like some hot pepper on the side. So whoever wants can use that. Whoever doesn't, no problem. How much of the city was destroyed during World War I and World War II? Actually, World War I was fully invaded by the German troops. We moved the capital in Moldova in the city of Iași. It wasn't destroyed because it was of strategic importance, whereas in World War II, we switched sides, and then it was bombarded both by the Nazis and the Allied troops. So it got more destroyed in World War II. I have missed which word where Bucharest was called Petit Paris. It was the first one. It was around the first one. It was late 1800s, early 1900s. This is what was called La Belle Époque, the golden era, the golden age, the beautiful age. I was told by a Romanian that the language is similar to Spanish. However, the names we have seen so far appear very far from Spanish. Is it true then that someone who speaks Spanish can learn Romanian easily? I would say it's the other way around. Someone who speaks Romanian can learn Spanish easily, because you see, Romanian is a Latin language at its core, being descendants from the Roman Empire. Romans conquered these territories many centuries ago, but in medieval times, it was influenced by Slavic by Slavic people. So the accent, you will notice sometimes we have this harsh Vlad, Dracula accent. This is the Slavic accent. And this is the language that was spoken in the churches. If you noticed in the church we have been to Stavropoleos, there was Cyrillic alphabet. So this is why the names appear to be very different than Latin. However, the main names, but the pronunciation, but the basic of the vocabulary is very similar. When we speak, though, people who speak Latin don't really get it from the first time. Besides Eugen Ionesco, who was French-Romanian, what has been Romanians' contribution to the arts? There were many influential people from George Enescu, and many others, in painters, Nicolae Grigorescu, and so on. You will notice the last name of Romanians, for example, if it ends in ESCO. This is a very good tip for you guys. If you ever have a coworker or someone you meet and you see their last name ends with ESCU, then the 99% they are Romanian. When you put O instead of U in the end, like this, Ionesco, it means it was a member of the French society, let's say, had good relations with them. So many people that influenced the arts during those times. Does Romania use euros? We do not, hopefully, or we don't even know anymore with what's happening with inflation nowadays. We were supposed to do it a few years ago, but the economy wasn't really ready. So we have the Romanian plastic lions. Is it true that some Romanians look back fondly on when Ceausescu was in power? Yes, that is correct, because communism in Romania came in didn't come in as harsh as in other countries, but it developed in a very brutal regime. So they remember fondly of the periods of this, not even 60s, I would say 70s. And then anything after that earthquake in 1977 definitely changed. So it's usually older people. How much does the palace cost to run per year? The last figures, this was pre-pandemic, was hundreds of millions of dollars. Are one-day Bucharest tours available? We'll be arriving early. Okay, this is a specific question, and I think Georgiana will answer this. So the best Ceausescu did is worse to destroy historical metropolitan Bucharest. How much did he ravage the countryside of Romania? Were large parts of the country unaffected by his revisionist agenda? It wasn't as in Bucharest, because he was not living in the countryside. So he wanted to make Bucharest a seat of power, and all the officials that visited Romania were going to Bucharest. If you would come as a tourist in communism, you would have a travel agent, a guide that was part of the secret police. So a fake guide, basically taking you wherever the communist regime wanted you to go. You were not really allowed to roam yourself, except with a couple of exceptions. So luckily, countryside actually was not very touched. Of course, there were collectivization processes when farmers got together to distribute all the crops to the government because there was no property. Nowadays, this is a great advantage, in my opinion. If you do visit Romania, don't keep yourself to Bucharest. Go outside the city because there's many beautiful things to see. When English is taught in schools, are you learning British English or American English? It's actually the first question I hear of this as a guide. I think it's my first time ever, and it's a great question because we are being taught British English. And my first time in the US, I was shocked. People wouldn't understand me. I had difficult, I didn't get it. And luckily we have, Hollywood movies and we can develop our language with that. But it's British English because apparently people who introduced it in schools said that that's the original English language. But I do not want to upset anyone. I love American English. How much time should one plan to spend to visit Bucharest? Where else in Romania must one visit to see the real Romania? I would say Bucharest is a city that, 2-3 days maximum. In our tours, we usually do 1 full day of Bucharest. And unless people are really interested in the communist part of things, or they really want to stay in the city, or they want to visit something else. But I think there are many, many gems in Romania to be discovered in the countryside. There's many areas where time seems like it stands still, and we have castles and fortresses that you will not find in Bucharest. For a Romanian trip, a full Romanian trip, we recommend 2 weeks, but it can be done in 1 week too. Miss seeing the new opera house and also the story behind the International Hotel. Story behind the International Hotel is a very quick one. It was the first foreign investment in communist regime. It was American investment after the visit of an American president, not the best American president. It was Richard Nixon, but that's the story behind Intercontinental Hotel. 2 things I want to add here. One, it was the place where the foreign journalists documented the revolution of 1989 because it was a very tall building. It is a very tall building, and they had prime access to see the mass movements in the streets. And second, they are renovating the Intercontinental right now. So hopefully we get out of this pandemic safe and well and ready for travels, and it will be a very beautifully restored hotel. Can you tell a little about Călătorești Carousel? It's one of my favorite places in Bucharest. Definitely another iconic building in the old town. Definitely worth a trip inside. It's a functional bookstore right now. And it was built by a banker, actually, in late 1800s, in the Belle Époque, in the French-inspired era. In the photo of Victory Boulevard, there are advertising signs for Kodak and Philips light bulbs. Also, there is English on a restaurant sign in another slide. Was American business popular so early? Yes, it's true. American businesses were hugely popular, especially in the interwar period. We actually had the first Ford manufacturing plant in Europe, in Romania, because of the cheap workforce, and it was started in the 1930s. Of course, communism came in. It couldn't happen. It couldn't happen anymore. But many businesses. What's the vaccination percent in Romania? I think we're standing at around 50% right now. Is it a friendly city? Is it safe for tourists? Wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. It is a friendly city, I would say. One thing about Romania is not only people in Bucharest necessarily, we don't smile just out of courtesy. So if you just see someone and you pass by them and you smile and they don't smile back, it doesn't mean they're like grumpy or anything like that, but they just need a little bit to know you, get some time to know you, and then you'll see a real, genuine smile. So they're really friendly and it's very safe. I know Bucharest back in the days, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, it's true that it got a reputation of, pickpockets, thieves, or, stray dogs or taxi drivers that scam you. It's not the case anymore. Just in the recent statistics, Romania as a whole ended up on top 10 safest countries because there's like no guns, no weapons, barely anything crazy happening. and not even pickpockets anymore. So in the last 10 years, I've been guiding through the old town, through the most popular places. There have been only cases when people have been to the ATM trying to get money out of it. And actually a guy going around when you left the ATM and you forgot your money would come back and they would pat you on the shoulder and say, hey, listen, you know, probably these are yours. So definitely a good place. Of course, always, travel etiquette, be mindful of your surroundings and so on, but not even bad neighborhoods, I would say, anymore. You mentioned that that Romania originally had few universities due to Ottoman influence. Do you have higher education now? Where? Thank you. Yes, we do have it everywhere, in every town. Communism, if they did something good, they did invest in education, in healthcare. So there's major universities everywhere, but they were started, of course, during the royal times in late 1800s. Right after we won the War of Independence against the Ottoman Empire, they started building the universities. For example, University of Bucharest, University of Iași, and Cluj. I know someone asked me about Cluj in the chat, so it's a very lively student city. What other places can you recommend to visit in your country? We would be here forever, but definitely visit Transylvania is my favorite. My last name, Blaj, comes from Transylvania. So probably my ancestors got moved to the Black Sea after the war. And Transylvania is worth a visit. The Danube Delta, if you like biodiversity, is a great place as well. And then Moldova has some really interesting areas in wine region as well. So in every region, there's something for everyone. Would we have a problem finding English-speaking residents? It depends where you go. If you come to Bucharest, the capital city, I would say anyone up to 40 years of age would speak basic English. And the closer you get to the old town, of course, 90% of people would speak English. No signs though. A lot of people ask us that, and no signage in English, unfortunately. Is Cluj a progressive city with younger demographic than Bucharest? I just answered yes. From Constanța, I am from there too. Hello, Iris. Nice to meet you. I am from Mangalia. So I am from the town, not from the city. From a little area. Does the House of Parliament still have the roof that opens up? I remember they told us it was put there so a helicopter could take him out safely during unrest. It was a very elaborate and expensive addition, apparently. And as with very elaborate and expensive additions, it does not work anymore. It is there, but I think they realized it's too much money to fix it. I'm sure it's fixable though. How many Jews live in the city now? Oh, it's very hard to say a number, but definitely a lot more are coming back, in the areas. A lot of them are descendants of the original owners that had property in Bucharest during the times when Jewish community was big. And just recently, the number one incoming foreigners in Romania are people from Israel. So a lot of the Jewish people in Romania left after the war in Israel. If your native language is Romanian, then why do you pronounce Ceausescu instead of Ceausescu? Well, because I make it easier for people. If I would say Ceausescu, they would sometimes not understand who I'm referring to. Whereas if I say Ceausescu, a lot of English-speaking people would understand. I read years ago that Vlad Dracula is considered a bit of a hero because he fended off the Turks from taking over Romania. Is this true or just fable? Definitely both him, Vlad Dracula, who was the father of Vlad the Impaler, the father of Vlad Dracula, from which Bram Stoker inspired his novel. Definitely, they were considered heroes because they were one of the last rulers of Wallachia, of the Romanian provinces that stood against the Ottoman Empire. Then the Ottomans kind of controlled these regions, even though they were autonomous, independent, they still had to pay a tribute and so on. For example, Manuk's Inn, the restaurant that we visited, in the beginning of the tour, Manuk, the name of the guy who built that place, was the chief treasurer for Wallachia. So he was paying every year the commission, the tribute to the Ottoman port. And every year he would keep a commission in his own pocket. Soon he became the wealthiest person in the southeast of Europe. and that's how he managed to start a lot of businesses, including in. Unfortunately, it's a habit that some of our politicians still have today. So the Ottoman influence or the medieval influence is still there in a way. What does "ku" mean at the end of names? It doesn't really mean something. It's just a way of ending the names to say it's of, let's say. So Ionescu would be of Ion, which would be the Romanian version of John. Or Enescu would be of Ene, and so on. Georgescu would be of George. What do Romanians like to do for fun and at night? Well, drinking is a very popular activity. There's a lot of nightclubs too. Like Bucharest is considered the capital for nightclubs and nightlife. Along with Budapest, the sister city in Hungary. So there's a lot of fun activities, anything from nature, really. But in Bucharest, yeah, the whole town is very lively, pubs, and you can go do all sorts of typical team building activities. Where are some of Romania's most famous writers and composers? You know what? Actually, in Moldova, in the region of Moldova, there were a lot of big composers and artists and so on, especially in 1800s and early 1900s. But Bucharest obviously has loads of them too. Will this be shown again? I missed most of it. I think it will be uploaded online. Thanks for the memories. I was born in Bucharest, but left 60 years ago. Visited many times. Mulțumesc. Mulțumesc, Nora. I hope you have a great life. And, I hope you had the chance to visit Bucharest or Romania during those last 60 years. Is the country safe? I did mention that, and I'm planning a trip to Romania in 2023. There are a few places that I would like to show my family. There will be 6 of us. I'd like to get a guy to drive us and so on. Well, if anybody has questions related to this, please get in touch with either Mara or directly with us. Just Google Romanian thrills and drop us a message and we'll help you out by all means. If Parliament is largely unused, why don't they use some of it for housing or arts events? Great question, because they do. There is the Museum of Modern Arts of Romania housed in the Palace of Parliament. It's actually a nice museum, but again, it's around 1%, and it's a big museum, but it's 1% of the whole building. Like they wanted to move a university, even to build a hospital. There's so many plans, but the building is built in a way, in such a megalomaniac way that it's not efficient, right? Energy efficient and all this and that. So it's just not worth it. It's just a black hole for money. Is Viscri far from Bucharest? Prince Charles has history there. Yes, Prince Charles has history in Romania. And he's probably connected to Vlad the Impaler, as documents might indicate. It's around 4 or 5 hours driving from Bucharest. So you definitely would need at least a week, in my opinion, if you want to get to Viscri. Do you do tours in that area? Yes, we do. I'm not sure which area you refer to, but we do tours in all of Romania. This is the only country we specialize in. When they moved the flat, did the people living know they were going to move while they were home? That's what I'm saying. Some people didn't, because it wasn't like they knocked on everybody's home and so on. If someone was, I don't know, ill, in bed, or old, and they would not leave their apartment for 1, 2, 3 days, they would have probably not known about it. What's the condition of the metro, and is it reliable for getting around? Yes, definitely. If you do come to Bucharest, don't be afraid to get the metro. It's definitely the fastest way to get. And this is another thing that communism did great. In all honesty, without the metro in Bucharest, you would suffocate. It's actually top 10 most congested cities in Europe. So you wouldn't really want to drive in here. Have they restored the casino in Constanța yet? Not yet, but they're almost finished. As with everything, it takes a little bit longer to restore the anticipated, but hopefully it will be done soon. When traveling outside of Bucharest in Romania, would you suggest traveling by train or to rent a car? If you're good on, driving, you drove in like other countries that are not Western Europe or the US, tight corners and, drivers that can cut you, then yeah, rent a car. If not, train is more comfortable, but is not as well connected. Your best bet might be a bus or hiring a driver. Warning that you have to have an international driving license. Mostly yes, unless you're from Europe. Why were the bank robbers who were forced to act in the film executed? Was robbery a capital offense? It was not, but it was communist regime. It was a totalitarian regime. So, they could change the law as they could just enact a new law, pass a new law. And it was more of a warning for anyone who would defy them again to prove a point. Is the little brown brick church still in the center of Bucharest near the park? I think it was from the Middle Ages. I think if we're referring to the one by the Revolution Square, yes, it's a red one, and it was also in the way of a boulevard, and a lot of people joke that why didn't Ceausescu move or destroy it? It's still there. It's called Crețulescu. Yeah, Escu again. So the Church of Creț, which means curly hair, apparently. So they joke that the communists didn't destroy that because it was red. It's like a brown towards red. So they said red is the Soviet, the communist color. I misspoke here earlier. It was the new National Theater I would love to have seen. Beautiful on the outside, but I didn't get to go inside when I was there. The new National Theater is close to the old town. It's interesting on the outside, but inside you can do tours. You can visit the National Theater nowadays in Romania with an organized tour. Even in English, you just need to call or to email in advance or have someone guide you over there. The old National Theater that was built in 1800s was bombarded and destroyed by the Nazis in World War II. So the new National Theater was built in communist times. Can you tell a little about Cărturești Carousel? It's one of my favorite. Yeah, I read this. Okay, I think I read everything, and I think
you did, and just in time. You're almost at the 2-hour mark, right? And it's definitely time for you to go to sleep. So thank you so much, Vlad. I really appreciate it. You gave all of us a good education, and I know that if we did the poll again now and we asked people who wants to plan a trip to to Romania, they would all say it's time. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the back end, Georgiana, as I saw you answering many questions. Awesome. Thank you. I hope that the warmth that you'll find there will keep you to get through the winter. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you guys both soon on another virtual tour. Take care and have a good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.